grew up in New Jersey, and I always wanted to like move to New York. I remember I wanted to go to NYU, and it was just insanely expensive, so I didn't wind up going there, and I wound up going to Rutgers. I came into the city all the time. I lived in northern New Jersey growing up. My dad worked in New York City. I would sometimes, I don't know, he showed me how to use the subway at a young age. I'd take the bus to Port Authority. I knew the whole MTA system. I would go to see shows, like a lot of bands and stuff like that.
Because he worked in the building right across from the New York Public Library.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy.
By Bryant Park, like the prettiest place.
Yeah, the slanty building.
The slanty building that stands out that you see in movies. You're like, I know exactly where they are.
Yeah.
Right by the library.
Yeah,
My dad used to work there.
Yeah, he used to work there. And I would, sometimes go with him to work. And yeah, he would be like, okay, well, here's how, like, he would show me like maps and be like, here's where you can go and hang out, which is crazy. Think about it. Kind of a different time then.
It was a different time, but also it made you fiercely independent.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not afraid to be out walking in the city by yourself.
We didn't even have cell phones or anything back then, And then I went to school at Rutgers, and then I just was very like, okay, after I graduate, I'm going to move to New York. And then I did wind up moving to Brooklyn for like a few years, but as my career kind of took off, I wound up, going back and forth all the time from New York to LA and New York to LA. And I never liked LA. It's like I was so happy when I made it to Brooklyn, and then it's like I had to keep leaving, and I had to keep leaving. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I kept trying to make it work. And in its origins, Burning Angel was like a very New York centric company. We shot movies. But over time it just became inconvenient and silly. And New York, and the rents you pay, and it's not like a city like if you live in Tallahassee or Pittsburgh or something where you can like have an affordable rent and not be home very often. Like if you're paying a New York price to live,
you want to be there.
You want to be there, and you want to be part of the making
friends and getting out in the restaurants.
I know. And when I realized I was at the point where I was home for maybe 5-6 days a month, I was like, it's time to go. I was very like, I always was like, I'm going to be back one day. Like, this is where I want to be. And at a certain point that started to seem very unrealistic, being a director and just everything I did was just so intertwined with the LA porn community.
Right.
And every time I'd go back to New York, I'd be so sad. Like, I mean, I would really look forward to dancing at Sapphire, and I would try to stretch the trip out as much as possible. When me and, my now husband, when very first started dating, and we started to get close, I even said to him, like, I need to take you to New York. Like, you won't really know me until we go to New York City together. Like, and he said it made sense. Like, on the way home, he's like, I understand you so much better now, like, you're not a California person.
No.
Like, and, I lived in LA for many years. I wound up buying a house there. And once I did that, I was like, I'm probably never going to move back to New York, but I can always go. And then, over COVID, everything just changed. And after I sold my company, and just my whole life changed. And at a certain point, I realized I don't have to be here anymore. And this is a place I came to for work and to accomplish certain things, and those things are done. So I now live about half a mile away from where I lived 14 years ago. Okay. And when I first came back, it's so weird. It feels like I left the house to go to work and now I'm home, and it almost feels like, and I'm going to some of the same bars and restaurants and even seeing some of the same people, some of the few that still live here that I used to see 13, 14 years ago.
Comforting.
And it feels like I blinked and had a really weird dream that I became a porn star. And here I am.
And I'm awake now, a blonde block away.
Yeah.
Only a block away.
It's like I'm right back where I started, It's like I went around to just come right back,
And you know what you said there.
It feels very surreal
about,
and it's almost like I'm just never going to be a real grown up or something, And I almost was a real grown up. In LA, I had a home, I had a driveway. I was like, I can't believe I'm moving from a 4-bedroom home in the suburbs to an apartment with no washing machine in my 40s,
But even crazier, I had the same. So I made my transition maybe a year before you, and I had that same thing. I was sitting at the park across from my place one day, and I'm like, "You moved here to get in the business."
Yeah.
Like all your friends live other places, and when you're in New York, my little studio apartment that was so tiny, like a little hotel room, I was happier than when I was in my whole house.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Okay, this is a real." And it just hit me like that. Like your mission is accomplished. And now you get to be somewhere where you're inspired. You've always been inspired by New York.
I've always been inspired by New York. It always kind of just like made me feel okay to be a weirdo, like grown-ups here don't act like real grown-ups. And actually, Lisa, I really do remember over COVID, I was doing weekly interviews on the Fleshlight Instagram.
Yeah.
And I do remember when I was interviewing you and you were in your New York apartment over COVID. And I do remember being like very like jealous, like jealous in the sense I was like, and I think other people felt this way. I actually remember reading an article about it. I felt like when I would read everything about the chaos here over COVID, and I'm just like in the suburbs where it almost felt like
it wasn't happening.
It almost felt like it wasn't happening, which to some people sounded like a blessing, aside from like the supermarket being like pretty weird. Like, like it's like I would cry when I would see people banging on pots and pans, at 6 p.m. And it really felt like I was like
you're missing
out on something, even if it was just to be here and complain about it or something. But
because it really feels like a community in the city that's very different. Everybody's very connected. Even if you take normal walks and you walk by a building where there's like a door guy or somebody that's outside, you become friendly with strangers in New York. You do not do that in LA.
I know. I never talked to my neighbors.
Oh, we all talk to each other.
Ever.
It's like a dorm in my building. Are you free for a half an hour for tea? Yes, let's sit out on my patio. Should I come to your apartment? You come into mine. And I have a whole route that I walk to the post office. I know every single door guy's name at the building next to the post office, and I stop and chat.
Yeah.
Something you do here.
I know.
You're just so much more human connected when you're walking.
Yeah, yeah.
Or taking a subway or taking a bus. There's just something.
There's something very just mentally healthy, I think, for me, of just being somewhere, where like to walk and do errands and to just, I don't know, to walk somewhere to get my coffee.
I love it.
And some people, I just feel like dream of a life where they have lots and lots of space and they're alone, and I get it. That's totally, and I thought that was my dream.
I think in LA,
you start to convince yourself.
You want to have a lot of space because everybody else does, and you feel like you need to get away from everybody, so you're going to have your own yard, your own space.
Right.
Then you're like, I use barely any of all of this.
I realized when I was moving, like extra bedrooms, just means an extra storage room, and like I
extra
felt
closet
like
to fill.
And I realized when I was moving, like, and getting rid of stuff, there's so much stuff I just don't use that just starts accumulating. Like it's very, I think it's healthy for my form of ADD to be in a place where it's like, if I don't use something here, it's got to go. Whatever
it's got to go.
Is.
And when you're in an apartment, what I love too about not having as much space, I find it easier to keep tidy.
Oh, completely.
Because you can't leave shit out.
You can't.
It'll look a mess.
I know.
It will look a mess if you just a couple of things.
But if it is a mess, it can be clean in an
30
hour.
minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, I can see everything from my arm's reach.
If you lose something, you can find it. You can find it. There's only so many places it can be. If you lose something in a house, like it's gone. You just have to buy a new one.
Yeah,
whatever it is.
Whatever it is.
If it's a shirt, things get lost in the laundry, whatever it is.
You moved here yourself and you're married. You bring your husband, who I feel is so Brooklyn and is so in his element
really
here.
Look, people are like, wow, he's like, this is going to be a big change for him. I'm like, LA wasn't his home. San Diego was his home. You know, he moved to LA for me and really, you know, when his porn career was taking off too. Um, LA was never a place that, you know, was home, but San Diego was his home. And look, San Diego and New York are very different, but they're both cities, and
Where
I
you
feel
can
like
walk
they're
things. Yeah.
you know, and I felt like when we first started dating, his life in San Diego was similar to a New Yorker's, with just much different weather, you know.
Many more seasons.
Yes.
But it has. It's the perfect fit for him.